Welcome to the UpstreamLife.com podcast, and I'm your host, Vishal Krishna. On the podcast today, we have the founder of the House of Kiraya, Ajit Mohan Karimpanna. The House of Kiraya as brands like Furlenco, Furbical, and Unlimited. Furlenco is in the news, by the way, and it's a new way of accessing furniture. It is changing the way people access the world of rentals. Okay, they offer furniture on rent and are setting new industry standards in the process. The products feature great design and they deliver in as quickly as 72 hours. It's built for the new generation of Indians. By the way, Palanco has been in the news of late with its large fundraise. For those of you who've been reading the papers and digital news, by the way, Ajit is also here to talk about transforming a business at scale, and he's sitting on a big opportunity. Depending on the report that you read, be it BCG or Amendus, retailing is a 1 trillion opportunity in India by 2025. D2C is going to be a 100 billion opportunity by 2025. So we're in a good space. And the numbers apart, we all know what builds a great business, and we need to hear it from Ajit. He's built a business that's equitable to consumers and other stakeholders in the company. Ajit, how are you?
Very good, Vishal. Thank you for inviting me here. Really an honor and a pleasure to be part of this.
So, what's interesting for me, Ajit, is that this business was born out of a personal need and a personal problem that you had, correct?
Correct.
That's how it came about in 2010. But you were sitting pretty in the USA. Why come to India and why start up at that point in time?
Right. So I actually found US very boring, if I may say so. Great country, great people, great education system. I studied there. But life is monotonous and boring because your first principle, first degree innovations that need to happen is already done there. It's a developed country. So you need to be super smart to solve some of the problems that are being solved there, like going to Mars, going to space, and things like that. I didn't think that I was smart enough that way. So I had to do what not so intelligent people did there: work in investment banking, work in things that which earns you money at the end of the
But is the investment bankers who fund the trip to Mars and all that, right?
without investment bankers, the trip to Mars cannot be funded.
Absolutely.
So I'm just saying that I admire the folks
Yeah,
who have to think beyond beyond all of these things that we think of or I think of. So I just realized that I don't have it in me to
okay.
actually go to Mars. So, but if I can't go to Mars, I can at least go back to India and make India US, if not US into Mars, right? So that was the pull back to India, right? And of course, while I was coming back to India, I was already trying to dabble with a few ideas because I also realized that I'm not cut out for a corporate job. That's not exactly what the rat race didn't excite me either. Again, you need to be of a different kind of smartness, which is that you need to be cutthroat and you need to be political. You need to be all of that
Absolutely.
to keep going on. Again, not so good at any of those things. So I realized that the best way to counter all of these things is to start up on your own and to start in India, where there are lots and lots of problems to be solved. Not that we can't think about going to space here. We can, we
Yeah,
should, but we also need to fill up the potholes on the road while we're thinking about space. So in the US, you don't have to worry about that. So I mean, basically, first world, third world problems are there a lot out here.
agreed.
So that's how I landed back in India. As I asked my employer Goldman Sachs to you know put me back in India. So with them, I moved back to India. And as I was moving back, I happened to sell all my furniture in the US. I was quite settled there. Sold everything of mine for literally peanuts. Approximately $5,000 worth of furniture. Then I sold it for like $500. Which also told me that selling of seconds furniture doesn't give you any kind of money. So I sold all of that, came to India, and while I was settling down, bought all my furniture from the local stores. Turns out that I had no idea about furniture, right? I don't have business in my blood, neither do I have furniture in the blood. So I went to the nearest store that I could look at. Whatever, okay, this looks good, so let's pick it up. Haggle a little bit or not. And the store salesman also said that, you know what, this is teak wood. And somewhere in
Yeah.
our history, we have heard that teak wood is good. Turns out that that was not teak wood. Right? What do I know about teak wood at that time? Right? So things came home, furniture came home. That too with a lot of issues. Things got delayed. My furniture did not reach home for like 45 days, 50, 60 days. All of the problems that you can imagine in a country like India in early 2010, when there was no Flipkart was just starting off, you know.
Yeah,
It
and we
was-
had only the incumbents, no, the Big Bazaar, the landmark groups. They were the
correct,
ones selling furniture.
correct. So and after having bought the furniture, in India, it's not that you just move in and that you're there forever. You look for the next house, next thing, which I did, and I moved from one house to another. And that is the time when the furniture started breaking as well, right? So I realized that movement is a pain. Packing everything and putting in
Yes,
a truck and sending it to another house, that costs you money. And while that is happening, furniture also breaks because these furniture they've not been designed for movement. They've been designed to come into your house and stay forever, right? If you do that, they may stay. But if you don't, if you actually dismantle it and try to put it in another house, it breaks. You know. So all of these things
absolutely.
happen, and that's when I realized that hey, you know, for somebody like me who's just still settling in, can there be an option to rent furniture so that at least, you know, for the foreseeable while I'm settling down, I'll rent, and then, you know, we can always think about something else in the future. There wasn't, of course, you know, there was no such option, and that is when I started digging into the market as to if there is a brand. There was none. If there is any local shops, which there are here in Bangalore, if you go to Shivajinagar, you can actually find rental shops. But that was it. You and I would not rent from those
Yeah,
shops.
but the quality is not assured. Yeah,
Yeah,
correct.
food is not assured, price is not assured. In fact, I went there for testing the concept itself, and the way they treat you is that depending upon which car arrives at the doorstep, their prices change, right? So if an expat lands up in a Toyota Innova, then immediately the prices would be for a whole bunch of furniture. Let's say about 20, 30 products. They will charge you the full cost of the furniture for
Okay.
a 3 month rental. So let's say if the furniture costs about 3-4 lakhs, they will say pay 3 lakhs and you take out the furniture for the next 3 months. So in 3 months, the entire cost of the furniture is recovered. Like, how does that work then, right? And of course, expats being expats, they are being sponsored by the respective companies for the relocation. So they have no problem, 3 lakhs or 5 lakhs. How does it matter? My company is paying. So the companies were paying through their nose to
Yeah,
fully fund the furniture, which is only being used for like 3 months because the expat is actually shipping their own furniture from their own locations back to India. So that was the system.
that's a great starting point for you. I mean, it's more, you saw it from a B2B perspective that there are X number of people moving places, but they're shipping their entire furniture back to their native countries or, even in transferable jobs, right? Movable jobs. It's
Correct.
very interesting, and companies would pay through the nose, and employees need not worry about it because the company is paying. That's a great point of view. You thought about it as a B2B solution, but then it's also a B2C in a way.
To be honest, Vishal, I didn't think much. It was not very well thought through. This is exactly. So I was not a visionary back then. Um, I want to do something, right? And this seems like an interesting problem to solve. So let me get in there. We'll see as days go by. So I started going in a very structured and logical manner, given the engineering background and the computer science background, and generally in a logical background. I went about it very logically as to how to go about, because at that time, how do you even price a rental sofa? A
Absolutely.
sofa, you may have an idea anywhere between 20,000 to 40,000 to even a lakh. But what is the rental price for the same sofa? Are you going to charge them for let's say a 40,000 rupees sofa? Are you going to charge them 4,000 rupees per month or 2,000 rupees per month or 1,000 rupees per month? What is the right number to and obviously people would like it to be 0 rupees per month, right? And you would like it to be 40,000 rupees per month. None of that works, right? So what is the right price point? So that was a discovery. So we were the first ones to set these prices in India. Like put a benchmark to that a chair needs to be priced this way. You can have an up and down, like a plus 20%, minus 20%. But what is the median price? So that had to be discovered. And we as a company discovered that particular price in the market and set it up for the market for others to follow as well.
I think that was interesting, right? First time I discovered Furlenco was in 2015-16 when a whole bunch of people were migrating to Bangalore as engineers because the startup boom had well and truly begun. And then they started saying they've rented from Furlenco. And then I'd ask them the pricing because me being a true blood Bangalorean, been here all my life, I've inherited furniture from my grandparents also, right? So I didn't understand this market as well, but it was brilliant for the people moving in. They could actually rent furniture on a subscription basis and return it when they want, and beautifully designed. So yeah, the pricing was something that even took me by surprise. How do you price such a thing, right? How did you go through all that, Ajit? Must have been tough.
Again, not like I knew exactly what I was doing. So that's the cool thing about founding your own company and actually not having any competition at that time.
Yeah.
Even I would say even now competition is actually very less. It's not an easy industry to crack.
Furniture hasn't been cracked at all.
Yes. Yeah. So I had the time and luxury and orders to actually discover my price in step-by-step way, right? Because it's not just about pricing what the consumer wants. It's about pricing. So you should price it in such a way that the Indian consumer should be able to adopt it. Number one, of course, no doubt about it. But number two is that what is the brand that you want to project? Whether it's a premium brand or is it I want a bed to sleep, rent me a bed. Because rental as a concept will be looked down upon. As it must be dirty. It must be used by somebody else. It is all of that, right? That's the natural thing that anybody would think of. But yet, we would go to a Ritz-Carlton or a Taj and sleep in that same bed which somebody else slept on yesterday. And we don't have a problem in going and sleeping there. So what does that mean?
Point.
It is about how you position a brand and what do you show as a product to your customer. If the Ritz-Carlton and Taj didn't have the board outside, and if they didn't have good folks on service, and finally when you enter the room, it is spick and span, white color bed sheets. The biggest reason for having hotels having white color is that you can prove that it is pure and nice and clean. They did all of that work for you to say that, okay, I don't care who slept yesterday. I find it useful. It's the same thing, even for furniture, right? So how do I prove it to you that how does it matter who used it yesterday? Today, when it lands up in your house, it should look brand new for you. And it is supported by a brand kind of Furlenco. So branding and premiumness of the product is also a very critical thing. And finally, only in this business, other businesses don't have this particular problem. Only in this particular business, you have to fund these assets also. So you need to have, there's a cost of money of funding this asset, which comes at a particular cost. So hence that you need to find that cost of money and the cost of operations, and then finally make your margins, and then you pricing it. So all of these comes into picture. And
you had to create the operating system from scratch.
Literally. Absolutely. So of course, all of this didn't happen overnight, right? You first start what the consumer is ready to pay, and then you start building everything around it in some sense. So, but quickly, I had some good mentors who actually said that, look, if you want to avoid the taboo, then you want to go a little bit premium in your approach itself, rather than trying to be the cheapest rental furniture company out there. Because if you go that direction, then the value for it will be way low. Then people would not have. It is a mass consumer choice for rental houses today because we made it premium enough. Because it is aspirational. It is good design, as you described. Every single piece of furniture that that is there on our website is designed by us. We have won 7 awards.
From day one, was that the genesis of the idea? So that I will get it designed by carpenters locally, at least source it from people who can do my designs.
So up till 2014, we were just a little bit random. So after 2014, I had some designers on board who gave me the confidence that we should design our own furniture. And then once that was the case, we have always been, from 2014 onwards, we have been designing our own furniture. So what you see on the website, there's no recollection of the past. There's only our designed furniture right now, nothing of the past. So
what did designing give you an edge or in terms of availability of more product range? Is that the reason?
The bigger advantage is that you can control the price of the product, number one. But more important that is the fact that in this business, the products that go out to customers, they also come back 100% sure. So when it comes back, a product like furniture, a sofa like where I'm sitting on, if it comes back, how do you ensure that the next guy takes it up without any problem? That is the biggest problem statement here. So we had to design it in such a way that it is refurbishable, it is remanufacturable, and it can go in when the next person takes it, he or she doesn't feel that somebody else has used it. That requires design skills. So we made it that way. So let's say a bed, in transportation, one of the legs break. We designed it in such a way that you just take another leg. It's all different parts. It's a system-based design. So you just put another part, it's done. It's ready to go. If it is a bed. If it is sofa, for example, the fabric that we use is not the normal fabric that you get from the stores. It's a different kind of fabric which can be washed easily. We are assuming that you will pour wine on our sofa, right? So when it comes back, we should be able to wash it and put it back into circulation. And that washing should not fade the sofa also. So all of these aspects had to be thought through while designing the furniture. Hence, design gives us an edge over others when it comes to our assets. Our assets, practically, we have bought about $50 million worth of furniture till today, barring about $2 to $3 million that we must have lost because of breakages and customer abusing, etc. All of those assets are still with us.
And these assets are in the books of the manufacturer? They keep the inventory for you?
50% of it is in our books, and 50% of it is in other financing books of financing partners.
Okay, interesting. I love the supply chain concept that you talk about, that if a sofa's leg breaks, you have that particular model ready. It's not manufactured fresh. It's already in stock that you could ship it and say, let's fix it and then move it to another customer.
Because in this business, utilization is a critical metric. So if assets come back and sit in your warehouse, it is not making money.
Yes.
You're paying debt. You've taken debt on that particular asset, which needs to be paid on a monthly basis. So if it is not utilized, it is going against you. So hence it should be, it's almost like we would like to think like Formula One. When the Formula One car goes into the pit, you can be able to replace it and put it back into circulation as fast as possible. The faster you do, the better it is for the business.
It's interesting. Did you use Formula One as the model to build the supply chain around this?
Oh, I wish it was the case. No, it's a way much more complicated. I'm sure Formula One is as complicated, but in this business, the dependency on the from the wood to the timber yard to the there's something called curation of the wood as well. Then to the manufacturing, to transportation of it, to the warehouse. All of this is a very complicated supply chain as of now. It's not a straightforward thing. And India is, at least when we started, it was fairly unorganized. Even now, it is fairly unorganized even at this point.
I think it's 90% unorganized, no?
It is 85% unorganized.
Yeah.
We are making a lot of headway into capturing the next set of supply chain as well. So, for example, we now have started sourcing the ingredients, let's say for a fabric for a sofa. They're anyway doing refurbishment, right? So might as well buy in bulk and supply to our vendors so that we can maintain the quality from day one itself. So the vendors make the sofa, give it to us, and customers use it, comes back, and we ourselves refurbish it, right? So for that, we'll need the same material. We can't change the material into something else. So we started getting into the area of controlling the supply chain itself. And very soon we will start thinking about manufacturing also.
That'll be a good move for you. I mean, now that you have scale and you understand what you're in 7-8 cities today.
We are in 15 cities right now.
15 cities. Okay. Okay. I want to talk about what Indians started off with, bedrooms or living rooms. I think Indians did their living rooms more than their bedrooms. So what did the new Indian think of? When you started, well and truly, it was the new generation of Indians looking at e-commerce, right?
Yeah.
So what did it start with?
Yeah, the most sold product is always the bedroom because that's a need, followed by living room because that's a want, right? Then there's a long tail of products.
Yes.
Long tail
which includes storage and everything, study probably.
Storage, wardrobe is a big selling thing. Dining table, not so much. Side tables, coffee tables. Then, of course, appliances is a big one. So
Yeah.
we do appliances as well. So TV, refrigerator, washing machine is a no-brainer for everybody. So once you convince a customer for furniture rental, he's already sold on appliance rental also. You don't have to convince him any further. Even though we are not an appliance company, right? We are
Yeah.
more furniture company.
You
House
had
of
to add it because they want the full stack.
they want it. In fact, that is the reason now we also have an asset light marketplace as well, where we give things like treadmill, laptops, uh,
Yeah.
all of those extra things which we don't own at all. We don't have it in our books.
Very good.
Our partners operate it, own it, and supply it to our customers with one bill. So the customer gets one bill, but the products can come from different companies.
And same with the bikes that you offer? Similar.
Yes, yes.
Similar.
We don't own the bikes at all.
So basically, you're saying if I'm a migrant coming from a Delhi to Bangalore, or going somewhere else, you want to offer that service.
Correct.
That you don't have to go anywhere. One shop, get a subscription.
Interestingly, Vishal, the positioning and the intuitive think about this business is that it is for the migrants, but 80% of our customers are not migrants. They are. So who is a migrant? Everybody is a migrant for that matter. Vishal, you are. Yeah, you are a Bangalorean, but I am not. I was not born here, right?
Correct.
So practically everybody is a migrant that way. What you do after that is a question, right? So yes, there is a population who might encounter Furlenco when they are migrating. But after that, the way things are right now, because we are already into our 6th year after funding and 10 year of existence, 80% of customers are people who are, I would say, settled. They are settled in their rental homes. They have been in Bangalore or whichever city they are. They're there for a long period of time. And if at all they're moving on from Furlenco, they're moving on to buy furniture and not otherwise.
I got it. And that's why I like to bring in unlimited at this point of time, right? I mean, people can refurnish their homes if they wanted, and they can take several subscription plans to it. Unlimited is linked to that kind of thought process.
So unlimited is actually, so this is where I start becoming visionary, right?
So go on.
The thought process evolves, and if Furlenco was serendipitous, unlimited was not. It was a very well thought through, my vision, what I wanted to do. That is what so unlimited is, according to me, it's path breaking, and I would like to think so. Here's why. I always admired Netflix as a company. Because of the way they changed. I mean, in our times, we used to rent a video cassette, come home, watch it.
I remember.
Right? Then it became DVD and whatever. And then Netflix came along and you pay one price and you watch everything, right?
Yeah.
So people are buying furniture. Then we changed into renting one sofa, one bed, etc., which is what Furlenco does. Why bother with all of these things? I want people to not rent. I want people to subscribe to a way of life, right? And unlimited is a subscription business where you pay one price, depending upon what package you want to take, pay one price, and in that one price, you take whatever you want. So it's like if you go to a restaurant, you have the a la carte menu, which is the Furlenco, and you have the buffet where you pay one price and you don't distinguish between tandoori, paneer tikka and kebab, or a roti and a biryani. You can take whatever you want. It's totally your wish. So you pay. So our prices are range from 2,000 rupees to all the 6,000 different slabs. So in that, the only limitation we put is the number of products. Originally when I had thought about it, I wanted to actually give unlimited furniture. Like, how much will you take? In a house, there will be limited number of space. So you can't take unlimited furniture anyway. But then my team had to step in and stop and say that, look,
So, that's what I was getting to, because when you say unlimited products, you might have 100 to 200 products that you need at home, right? Depending on the plan. I'm wondering, so everything from living room, storage, all that. So I can select and change whatever I want, and that gets delivered and set up at home.
Correct. You may not even have the full house to furnish. You may only have, let's say, a bedroom or two to furnish. So we have a program for you as well. Also, you may be that person where you want an entire 3 BHK filled up. So any which way, you have all of the entire Furlenco products at your disposal. You can pick anything you want, including appliances, and you're set. So anywhere, the most popular one is the 5,000 rupees product. For 5,000 rupees, you get 16 products in the house. That is good enough for a 3 BHK, all products included, 5,000 rupees per month. You're set. So you take up a house for 30,000, 40,000 rupees, you pay another 5,000 rupees, you're done, finished. right? So the
It's
entire
wonderful.
Indian rental household becomes an addressable market for us, all of a sudden, right? Why do you want? Because if you compare it to EMI, 16 products will cost you roughly about 3 to 3.5 lakhs. We have done the math. And that is what we are giving it to you for 5,000 rupees per month. So even if you take EMI, it will be 3 times that. It will cost you roughly about 15,000 rupees per month to own all those products. So this is costing you 1/3 of it, which means that for roughly 5 years, you would not have paid off the asset at all. So
Absolutely.
why bother buying it?
Absolutely.
So Furlenco rental was not knocking at the buyer's market. You would ultimately still go ahead and buy. You rent, and it's like, you're renting for a short period of time. There is a price attached to it. And ultimately, you move on and buy because you paid off so much that might as well buy it. Unlimited is a value for money thing where
Can I swap products? Can I change products the way I wanted to? I can. For example, I have tons of books at home, so I want my library to look different every 5 months. But can I swap?
So
is it possible?
It is. So what we've first done is we have not seen people swapping so often. So what we did is once in a year is a good time to swap. Let's say Diwali is a great time to swap. So let's say if you take the plan, you are given a 45-day curation time. We understand that it will take time for you to settle down in your home. But the first 45 days, you can look, I took this sofa, I don't like it. Can you take it back? So you can set up your home for 45 days. At that time, you can do whatever you want with the plan. You can keep reaching in. After 45 days, we lock the plan. And then for 1 year, you can't swap. But the moment the renewal time comes, it's an annual subscription model.
Yeah, got it.
Renewal time comes in, you can swap and get something new. And
Ajit, this is fantastic. And in terms of the supply chain itself, will these have limited designs so that it keeps your costs low, or will you be able to add more designs?
No. So as I said, this is the more visionary part of it, right? So I actually want all of fresh designs to start in unlimited world.
Okay.
So we actually introduced something called luxury package as well.
Okay.
Luxury package, you'll have access to all the latest designs, high-end designs. So that's like the caviar of the buffet, that you can take caviar also in the luxury part. So no. So generally, these programs have as much as possible, as wide an assortment as possible. But just if you want extreme value for money, then only for the basic plan, we don't give you all the access for it. But otherwise, the light and the premium and the luxury, you pretty much get all the products that you want, the entire suite of products.
Okay, I want to talk about Kiraya itself. Why rebrand it to Kiraya at that point of time? You did it many years ago, actually. And is there a reason? Is it a financing reason that you had to say, I'm House of Kiraya, then have sub brands around it that can raise money? That's a good model to do.
Yeah. Let me explain. I got it. So again, this is where, see, once you start losing your hair and start getting better at your job, you have time to think about what is the right thing to do, what not the right thing to do. So Furlenco is doing great, right? It's Furlenco and Unlimited is roughly about 200 crore plus in revenue at this point of time. Then we came up with the idea that, look, from the rental world, ultimately people move on, right? And they're moving on to buying. So here is somebody that I have nurtured and brought into my system, and they've remained with me, they like, etc. But ultimately, I have to say tata bye-bye to them, right? My question that we started asking ourselves is, look, we spent the CAC, got them in, they're moving out. What can we do to retain them? Because here is a CAC-free way to know that somebody is giving back your sofa and buying a new sofa, right? The Urban Ladder or the Pepperfry of the world does not know that this person is buying the furniture. I know that this person is buying because he's giving me back my sofa. Now, we are fools to actually let go of that particular opportunity, right? So that is where we decided that as a first step towards creating a different business itself, to start selling remanufactured, refurbished furniture to our customers, right? That's the genesis of Furbicle itself.
Okay.
But then we also started thinking about that. Look, what is like we want to have some. We will create newer brands, newer business models, but it has to have a ethos. It has to have something connecting. We just don't want to randomize it. So the core that we figured out of ours, the core of what we are, is sustainability. Furlenco as a business model, furniture goes out, comes back, gets refurbished, goes out, comes back. Unlimited is the same thing. It's just subscription model. Furbicle is also about furniture that has come back from people. It is remanufactured, given.
But I can own it.
and you're selling it. So sustainability is the core of our business at the end of the day. So can we now create an umbrella brand which will house a bunch of sustainable brands, right? So Flamingo, Unlimited, Furbicle, and very soon there's another brand that is getting one of the launches. I'm just waiting to announce it. It's already there. If you are able to find it, you'll be able to see it live, but it's not publicly launched yet. That also has a sustainability angle to it. Everything that we do will have a sustainability angle. How we do it, it will be part of the business model. It is not for the sake of being sustainable. For example, I can say that we use reusable packaging. I can say that we have electric vehicles and say that we are sustainable. No, that's not enough. I'm saying that is not enough to get us to what we want. The business model itself needs to be sustainable, right? And for us, sustainability is if I'm cutting a tree at the end of the day, as a business, we are a furniture company, we need to cut tree at some day. It should not add at the end of the day. It should not be negative. It should be positive. And that can happen if you have sustainable methods of re-commercing of stuff. And that is where each of these business models work. So every business model that we do will have some tenet of sustainability. To get all of that under one umbrella, we said House of Kiraya is that particular umbrella. We are primarily a furniture company, which will create brands for each segment of people's lives with the internal ethos that each of them needs to sustain.
So the buying, rental, and subscription, you're serving all of them.
Correct.
And the fourth one, obviously, you're not sharing it at this point in time. I'm looking for it on the website. I looked for it yesterday.
No, so it's all different brands. So you should think of House of Kiraya as like the Volkswagen family.
Yeah, got it.
Volkswagen as a company, Audi as a company.
Yeah, you have the Skoda, Audi,
that's
Volkswagen, then you have Porsche and Bugatti and the rest.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't have to, how does it matter to you whether Furbicle and Flamingo are same company or not, right? So the fourth brand that we are launching, there will be no connection to any of these brands at all. I can tell you that it's in the premium segment.
So it's a platform. Amazing. So you're a platform.
Exactly.
Same platform, but different customers.
So we have, and that is where the operating leverage comes for us, right? We've already solved the tech stack of it. That we've created all the apps and the iOS and the Androids and the web stack. Everything is created. The logistics and warehousing stack is also created, where we have warehouses all across the country in different sense. We have a design team. We have sales teams. Now all you need to create is different pods inside each of these different buckets. And the only extra spend that we need to do for each of these brands, marketing spend. We have to create those brands. But other than that, we are using the same system to actually create multiple brands.
Ajit, does the last 10 years of experience molded you to this platform kind of thinking?
Yes.
You mentioned first principles. You said US has solved a lot of first principles thinking.
Right.
I think a lot of the first principles thinking is about this. How do you make it a platform and build on top of the platform multiple things so you don't waste time, effort on doing things that are unnecessary?
Correct. Because in the furniture world, I think that one brand will not dominate. I don't think IKEA will dominate India. I think you will need an IKEA, you will need a Pepperfry, you wanted Purple Ladder also. India totally needs an House of Kiraya as well with all its brand, right? So I believe it's a multi-brand approach, which will there's no one car company where everybody's buying from. You need all the different cars that are there. Right?
Yes.
Same thing with furniture also. You will need different brands. In fact, it's the most unbranded part of the world. We are trying to introduce brands so that people start recognizing furniture with brands. Cars are already branded. Mobile phones are already branded. There's no unorganized market. In furniture, we want to create the brands. And the more and more now, as the country is growing, it is becoming more and more branded.
Why haven't you done a DIY, do-it-yourself kind of furniture yet?
No comment.
I'm asking this because I'll be very frank. I've been to the IKEA stores, and being Indian, it's a long haul for me and a long haul experience for me. You just want to go buy. The experience should be easy, and obviously you don't want to come and do your own building and nuts and bolts kind of a thing, right?
Right.
I'm talking about more of a psyche here. Is there a space for that in many ways as a brand itself?
Are you talking about DIY in creating your own furniture or in terms of installing the furniture?
Installing furniture.
I think Indians are not taught early in their lives to deal with complicated stuff. In the Western culture, it definitely is. People do their own chores. People fix up their garden, fix up their house. People build. I know friends who build their own homes.
Right? I've seen that myself.
Here in India, we don't even know how to fix a nail. We live like princes. in our own homes, right? We are pampered that way.
Absolutely. Nothing wrong with it, but that's our way of working and living. Yeah, you're right.
And since the labor is still so cheap, why would you fix up all these things? Because you're going to do that once.
Absolutely.
Installation of furniture. How many times will you do it? Why do you need to learn that? So you might as well go and grow rice and wheat and pulses and all that, right? Because you are eating every day. So why don't you DIY that as well? So I don't see any point in trying to be DIY. And there's a small little story as to why IKEA did it.
Go on.
So in the US, what people realize that because there is a culture of fixing up your home, and IKEA made it very simple. The dads in the home, I mean, I'm not trying to be patriarchal, but the society that was there, the dads in the home felt that they're not contributing enough, right? So in order to get the dads and the family together in setting up home, thing, this could be a great family affair. So they found that as a nice niche in that Western market, and people caught on in a culture which is into setting, creating their own homes. Where in India do we actually set up our own, build our own house, and where do we have the time?
We often give it off to contractors.
Because I don't want that headache, is what people say, right? And we're not trained that. You have not worked with your dad and to say that, let's create a new stool, or let me fix the garage. Let me go and get the wiring done. In the US, it's a very expensive process. You set up all these things, because I know of my friends, PhD holders, who have changed their entire toilet, Western closet. They have removed Western closets, put in new Western closet. It's all there on YouTube, how to set it up. Would you do that in your house? You will not even touch.
No, we won't touch it.
So if you don't do it, the culture doesn't exist. Now you're trying to push in a DIY of a product which you will not use at all.
It's beautifully said. I mean, a lot of people try to ape the West in India. It doesn't work, because culturally, it's also thousands of years of difference. For example, I come from a trading community. So my interaction with my dad's always been about trading. It's not been about furniture, fixing furniture. You would think it's a waste of time. I mean, nothing against
strongly your time, because you are not going to do it tomorrow. I think there's a better way of, I think organic farming is a better DIY than fixing
the furniture thing,
right? Because organic farming at least will give you rice tomorrow and again next day tomorrow. You can't get again. You will not keep installing furniture tomorrow, day after, and day. Why do you want to learn the skill? So I think here in India, because of the cultural issue, I don't think it's
okay. Lovely. Let's come down to the D2C subject. Very important subject to me. There's so many brands mushrooming in every field. In your field, not much so, right? Where 5-6 players, not many. How do you see this D2C thing shape out in our country? Do you think the time is set right? Because most of them are coming online. Even the tier 4 cities, people are using mobile phones now. But each town, like you said, the cultural differences in India will have a different pricing, different way of consuming a particular product. Do you see, because India offers markets for everybody, right? What is the difficulty at this point of time from the D2C market as you see it? Do you think we'll serve the urban consumers very well, but going to tier 3, tier 4 cities, probably you need a blended model of physical versus online. The customer service approach would be different. Are you thinking about these kind of things?
Yeah, you bang on right that India is not, India is as big as Europe, right? So we happen to be one country, and everything and anything is different in different parts of India, right? But there's some homogeneity as well. And I'll tell you what is common between Indians. I think aspiration is common everywhere, right? So what brands do when we say D2C brands and the way things are coming out, a lot more and more brands coming, what brands provide to the customers is a reason to trust.
Right.
If it is branded, I can trust this thing, and there's something behind the brand, a person, a company, a process. I won't be cheated, right?
Got it.
The older world, non-branded world, if you remember the old Doordarshan ads and all, you would see that Kirana store guy, somebody like the Rajni serials, where the Kirana store guy is trying to weigh something, and then underneath that weighing pot, they try to put some pull down kind of a mechanism, because of which the shopkeeper has to sell only 750 grams instead of selling 1 kg. So he makes profit on the 250. That was the culture, or rather, that was
the trust. The lack of trust was a big thing.
Yeah. So everybody we were trained to not trust, right? And everybody's trying to hoodwink everybody else. Nothing wrong. Well, I'm also part of the culture, right? So I'm just saying
You're
that
all
was
part of it. I remember all those days when we used to haggle around with these people, shopkeepers.
Correct, because
you're like, what?
You think that people are there out to cheat you.
Yeah.
And the part of it was true. Everybody was trying to make the money was so scarce that everybody was trying to pawn off every little dime that you can make everywhere, right? I think what brands have done is to take away that mental anxiety that I don't have to worry, even if I have to pay that 10-15% premium, it's going to be safe. That is why the oldest brands, the Bajajas of Bajaj, Hamara Bajaj and all that, it grew because you don't have to worry about that. So now, because scarcity has gone away, we are not worried about, it's not middle class anymore. The old middle class is not, we have money now, right? So now people want to, trust is more important, right? Here is a brand, I'm ready to trust you. I'm ready to give you 10-15% more than what the market is, right? Which is where, if you notice, Big Baskets of the world, Flipkarts, everything is going towards homegrown brands, right?
Yeah.
What the name of the segment? There is that marketplace model, and then there's your own brands.
Private label.
Yeah, because people are ready to pay for that stuff, right? So trust is what brands do, and I think now is the age for that even more. And that is same for whether it is tier 1 or tier 2. Because in tier 2, what happens is the brand gives not just trust, it gives aspiration also.
Yeah, it is aspiration.
Which my tier 1 brother is having access to this particular tier 1 brand. Now it has come to tier 2. In fact, for Linko, you mentioned that we are a migrant phenomenon.
Yes.
To disprove it, we went to Jaipur. Jaipur is our fastest growing city. How many people actually migrate?
So you created aspiration there. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
How did Jaipur guys know? I'm sure there's some brother of Jaipur guy sitting in one of the cities who might have used. So when we went there, we showed ourselves our face. Boom, they started renting in Jaipur. Chandigarh too, right? Recently we launched in Chandigarh. So in tier 1, it is the trust that you give. In tier 2, tier 3, you give the access to aspiration, right? So I think this is the golden age, or at least silver. Maybe next decade will be golden. Silver age of B2C brands. You'll see an onslaught of brands coming in India.
And do you think we should invest in physical centers, say 1,000 square feet stores or 5,000 square feet stores?
I'll speak in the context of furniture. I think it will be required, depending upon the business model. Furlenco does not require. Here's why: because it is a non-commitment model. So you're not committing to the product forever. So you can go wrong in your selection. And if you go wrong in a selection, you can give it back. Hence, I don't need to come and prove myself in the store that this is what is
lovely. So you're saying even the smaller town people would order online for this.
Correct.
Well, nice.
They are ordering online as well. May not be the case, small town or big town, for a high ticket, high purchase kind of a thing, high commitment kind of a model where you want to touch and feel and sit and
that's a super premium kind of a thing that you're talking about.
So the higher the ticket size, the more the requirement of
very nice.
I think it will be an omni-channel approach at the end of the day.
Okay, now let me bring the technology babble. Now I see the news, they talk tech. Everybody says cloud this, cloud that, apps this. But what I mean, for an entrepreneur such as you, because you started out in an era where things weren't proprietary, perhaps, right? How much of it should be proprietary in-house? How much of it should be sourced from outside? And what does technology mean to you? We know you talked about the data story. That's important. But should brands worry about tech being proprietary?
Okay, so let me, I have a theory about it. I'm still formulating that I'm right on that. I think early on, right, if it's just starting off, I think you should be as outsourced as possible, right? Anything that is not your core, you should have it built from outside. Get somebody else to develop your website. Whatever is your core, do it. Whatever is not your core, have it built outside. But the difference between the first early stage and the quick growth stage may not be much, because in the growth stage or early growth stage, you need to build everything on your own. Because there is no solution out there which solves because you're assuming you're solving innovative problems. That innovation has not been sorted by any other technology outside that you can actually just pull it up and put it here, right?
It's better to build on your own.
You should build, invest, make whatever is required. We are in that stage, right? So
very nice.
Most of it is 99% is in-house. The general products like Zoho and these that are outside.
Yeah.
Even our warehouse management system, our logistics management system, everything is in-house. But our growth is like rampant right now. We are now at a stage where things like SAP is starting to knock at our doors.
Yeah.
Because now the problems are become at a different level altogether.
Yes, because the variables are a lot more for you.
The variables a lot more than I need. So we are already nearly 100-member team technology wise.
Yeah.
To solve all the problems in the world, I'll have to create an SAP, I'll have to create a Microsoft, I'll have to create all of it. That's not possible, right? So I think ultimately it will start going back to the outsourcing model. And that is where I start understanding that your Fortune 500 companies, all of them outsource their entire work to TCS, Infosys, and the likes, right? So I think that's a curve. It will happen in many different ways.
Okay.
I don't think unless you're a pure tech company, Google is a pure tech company, Facebook is a pure tech company. Unless you are that, I think any of those operational companies, for that matter, Flipkart, us, all of these things ultimately also need to have an outsourcing now. So it depends upon the context.
So phenomenal. You say start off with small apps, build your own proprietary, then as scale becomes outsourced to somebody who can manage everything.
Yeah. Now that scale and everything is debatable. That is where the CEO, CTO needs to think through it. There's no right or wrong answer for it. But that will be the curve. Right?
Okay.
Then that curve will be different for different kind of businesses.
Okay, very well said. Okay, what are your predictions for the next 2 years in the retail industry and sticking to furniture also? And why have you picked 2026 as the year for you to say you'll generate more than 600 crores of free cash flows? Was there a particular reason you made that statement in the press?
It's a 5-year journey from 21 to 26. So that's one thing. But no, I think I'm going to change that statement very, very soon. Because I also said during that time that we will hit 250 crores in revenue by 200 crores in revenue by December. I think that's what I said. This month we are hitting 250 crores and there's 3 more months left out. So things are faster than what I was expecting. So predictions will keep changing. So we will hit whatever I said for 2026 by about 23, 24 itself. Then IPO things are knocking at our doors as well. The scale is also going up, and Zomato and the likes have all given us the confidence that Indians will accept the IPO stage as well. To your other question, retail, I think there's going to be a boom now. People, I think the real Indian wallet is going to open now. There's of course the pent up demand due to COVID, but people also kind of realize that look, how long are you keep saving? Life can be unpredictable, right? We just saw COVID around us. So I think now people are going to start enjoying their life. We will start becoming a spending economy. There will be that shift. At the same time, people are going to invest. I think India is going to be an interesting mix of saving and spending. US is a pure spending market. Consumer driven, totally consumer driven, and take debt and spend money kind of a market. I don't think India will be like that. US is like that, sorry. So India is going to be more like we will spend. And with this whole, I like the way these fintech companies have all said that, Upstock, there's so many ads that I keep saying, mutual funds sahi hai. I think there's also this thing about advertisement for investing, which didn't happen I've not seen it in the US. So I think there's going to be that millennial money going into investing also, and they're going to be spending. It's going to be very interesting. I think next 10 years are going to be the most exciting part of India.
And that's why I think people should subscribe, rent or buy from Furlenco, Furbicle and Unlimited.
Yes.
Interesting. I'm going to ask you 2 easy questions, okay? Depending on how you want to answer. This is personal. What is your 30-second guide to happiness? Okay, that's one. And the last one would be the books and, art or music that you'd recommend to the audience.
Right. So 30-second guide to happiness. Well, money will come, money will go. What you start realizing is that we all chase riches in some sense. But when that money comes, it's not that yesterday is any better than tomorrow. It doesn't change that drastically. And that material pleasure that you get out of that extra money, it might make you happy for one day. Next day is back to square one. So I think the answer is somewhere else from an happiness perspective. I think, sorry for a longer answer.
Go on. That's fine. 30 seconds is just a number.
These are philosophical, right? What I've realized during COVID times is that we are absolutely, human beings are social beings, right? And COVID made us antisocial, right? And that's the only reason I hate the COVID times.
Yeah.
So
I've seen what it's done to kids.
yeah,
They
yeah,
become antisocial.
skills, everything has gone around, right? So I think the more social we are, I think we'll be more happy. Is my thing.
No, that's
And that's
really
what
well
it is.
said. I agree with that. I
Right.
agree with
So,
that.
we still heard of depression going up and anxiety going up and all this. Is that us becoming antisocial, right? And it's going to reduce. I'm not saying it'll go away. It'll never go away, right? But we need to be social beings at the end of the day. That's, I think, is the key to happiness.
Okay. Okay. Recommendations, books, audio, video, or art even.
There I'm a little bit dumber.
You shouldn't say this. You built such a great company. You keep calling yourself not a visionary, and that's so unfair on yourself. You're being unfair on yourself. Do you think?
No, so me, I like things which are slightly, while I read their business books and all that, but it doesn't change my life. It doesn't all change my life completely.
Yeah, got it.
What gets me interested is things about human behavior. There's a book called Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely, where he highlights so many different things out for day to day. What happens, what doesn't happen. Have you thought about this? Is it morally wrong to steal a pen from office, right? Is that good or bad? It makes you think. We most all picked up a pen from our office, but is it correct or incorrect? These kind of questions are posed in that, and there's the experiments done in MIT and all that. So these kind of books I really, really love. I've tried the more philosophical big stuff like Founders at Work and all that, but somehow I feel that you need to realize it yourself. You need to lose your own hair than to read it from something else. So I'm not a big fan of that. But anything which tries to discover your brain, I really enjoy that. Music wise, I span across everything and everything, right? From English to Tamil to Hindi to Malayalam to everything. I listen to everything practically. So I'm always
Ilaiyaraaja and all that.
From Ilaiyaraaja to Rahman to whatever the latest. So I span it. I can talk to the kid downstairs who's 24 years old. I can even sync up with the Kishore Kumars of the thing. So that is music is something I really, really enjoy a lot. Mostly. So it's kind of a therapeutic for me. Music.
The family is therapeutic too, I'm sure.
Yes, of course. Kids, no doubt about it. Always, they're precious.
That's wonderful. And that note, ladies and gentlemen, that's Ajit Mohan Karimpanna, the founder of the House of Kiraya, is also the CEO there. And thank you for being on theupstreamlife.com. Ajit, look forward to having you in another session real soon, perhaps in your office next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Shah.